Greetings, everyone, and welcome to Ask Aaron. My name is Aaron Holm. I'm the Manager of Consumer Engagement for Ottobock North America. I'm talking tonight with Mr. John Kriesel, a veteran, a U.S. veteran, bilateral amputee. There he is, an author, a motivational speaker, and I could go on and on and on. A golfer, a radio host. Welcome and thank you, John, for joining us tonight.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
So funny story, talking with John last week, I think we knew this, we had talked in the past, but we realized, if that's a term, that we are from the same hometown, Vadnais Heights, and graduated from the same high school. A big shout out to White Bear Lake High School in Minnesota. Go Bears, right, John? Pop Power?
Yes.
Yeah. I certainly graduated a few years before you, but we won't get into that. And I've heard from some friends that they put in a library after I left, maybe it was there, but I don't know. So, and you were born in Minnesota, correct?
Yes. I was born in Hibbing, and then we moved to the Twin Cities metro area pretty quick after I was born, and then that's where I've lived my entire life, besides military deployments.
Okay. What kind of student were you in White Bear, or at White Bear?
Scant at best. High school was a social. It was a social thing for me. I didn't have the best work ethic at school. I goofed around. I wanted to make the other classmates laugh. It drove my teachers nuts. The ones that I see now, they knew that I was not a bad kid. I just wanted to be funny and
just ambitious.
Right. So the military, I needed it because it gave me the direction. It kind of whipped me into shape. Those drill sergeants they squared me away pretty quick.
Absolutely. What drove you to the military? Do you have a family history of military? Either your parents serve, or what motivated you to join?
When I was 10 years old, I saw the first Gulf War on TV, and that was the first televised war in my lifetime, and it was basically around the clock. And I mean, those images of us, just the awesome firepower that our military has. And I saw the images of the men and women over there protecting our way of life and trying to liberate some oppressed people. And at that moment, I was like, this is what I want to do for my career. So I joined the minute I could, and that was my 17th birthday.
17, right away, that day?
Right away.
And then when did you take off and go to boot camp, leave home? And
right after my junior year in high school. So it was about I don't think even a week after we were done with our junior year. Went to basic training, came back with a couple weeks left before going back for senior year. So my senior pictures, I looked just dumb because it was like the short hair. I had the big Adam's apple. I was at an awkward age, and so the senior pictures just. Yeah, not good.
You didn't send us that one to share, John. Maybe we can follow up with something like that. Wow. Okay. What was that like? I mean, going to boot camp, leaving. You certainly sounded like mentally you were ready for that.
Yeah, and it was. It was a shock to the system, and of course, while I'm down there, hating life, because basic training. Now, at that age, you think that it's the most difficult thing you'll ever do in your life. After a short time in the military, you realize basic training was kind of fun. But at 17, all your freedoms are gone. You're being screamed at, yelled at, forced to do all kinds of stuff that isn't fun. And in the meantime, you get letters from back home, from gals in high school or your buddies, and just talking about how awesome their summer is.
Oh, right.
And it makes you hate them. You're just like, come on, I don't need to hear this right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, December 2nd, 2006, your life absolutely changed. Can you talk us through that day a little bit?
Yes. So we were on a deployment to Iraq. Our unit was, I was with the Minnesota Army National Guard, and we were about 9 months into our deployment to Iraq, and they needed volunteers to go out on a patrol to watch this intersection that IEDs had been placed in frequently. Ended up not seeing who we were hoping to see. So fast forward a little bit later, we ended up getting asked to go on another mission to check out some suspicious activity. They needed volunteers. So 5 of us volunteered, said, we'll go. Went down in that area, checked it out. Then we got redirected to go because a drone spotted somebody digging in the road not far from us. And now we knew that they weren't planting flowers, so we had to go and check it out. So we headed that way. And on the way there, our vehicle struck an improvised explosive device, a 200-pound bomb. And the moment I will never forget. And again, I don't want to forget it because the lessons I've learned, I'll never forget that feeling after the bomb went off. And that picture right there is of our Humvee after it was tipped back down on its bottom. After it went off, I saw the vehicle on its side completely, looking like that. It was demolished. The doors, which each door takes 4 strong men to lift, those had been blown 100 yards in every direction. So the 200-pound bomb did its job. It rocked us. And so I had been briefly knocked out, but I woke up on the ground. There were still rocks falling from the blast. So it sounded like a hailstorm. And I remember, I joked that I didn't want to believe what had just happened, but I've been a Minnesota Vikings fan my entire life. So I'm used to the worst case scenario. It was one of those moments where you just go, this couldn't have happened. And I looked down and saw that my legs were a mess. My left leg, femur was broken, sticking out of my skin. My right leg just below the knee looked like I stuck it in a wood chipper, and it was bleeding profusely. So I was certain at that point that that's where my life was going to end.
Wow. And you were conscious. You were out
Yes.
for just a moment in time, and
yes.
And then you were conscious, and you lost some loved ones that day as well, some very close friends of yours.
I did, and I feel like that's part of the reason why I don't have PTSD now, and I'm very just thankful for the life that I have. Is I was awake, and I remember thinking I'm going to die. So when I saw that this was a dream, that this had actually happened, and I thought, as bad as this is, and as tough as the recovery ahead of me is going to be, it would be crappy of me to sit here and feel sorry for myself when I got a second chance at life that my friends didn't get. And it really put everything in perspective for me and gave me the drive that I'm not going to waste a second chance at life, and I'm going to make the best out of every day moving forward. And I don't know if I would have had that same perspective if my friends, if I hadn't been awake after the blast. If I just had been knocked out and I woke up in the hospital and didn't have legs, I might have been like, what the heck happened? What's going on?
Yeah.
So I'm glad I was awake.
Yeah, absolutely. Now you said you woke up you were transported to Walter Reed, but where did you, in between that, you had to have had some, were you brought locally to a hospital area okay.
Yes, I was brought to Al Air Base first. That's where they took what was left of my legs off. They had to shock me back to life 3 times, which I did not know until my friend Jim Cosmo was writing my book, Still Standing. He interviewed everyone that was involved in the incident or was at the hospital. And my company commander, Chip Rankin, had been at the first field hospital at Al Air Base. And he saw them shock me back to life 3 times. And so I knew I had been close to passing away, but I didn't realize it was that close. So it was chilling to hear that. Well, then they stabilized me there for a flight to Balad Air Base north of Baghdad. There they stabilized me for a flight to Landstuhl, Germany. And then Landstuhl, my situation deteriorated. They didn't think I was going to make it. But then I was able to finally make a flight back to the United States and woke up at Walter Reed.
And your injuries resulted in an above the knee on one side and a below the knee amputation on the other side.
Yes, and I had broken arms. I had lost a portion of my colon. I had all kinds of stuff. My pelvis, I think one of the bigger challenges was my pelvis. Both the iliac wings of my pelvis had been broken So they were doing kind of this, and that was incredibly painful because it was just unstable. And if you're laying or sitting, all of that's moving around. And so they had to piece that back together when I was at Walter Reed.
And the recovery downtime, that's sometimes you go into a dark place. And what was that like for you? I mean, you're in between the time where it's just a healing process and you can't do anything but try to have patience. And I mean, what was that like? What did you do to occupy your time? And a lot of things going through your mind, obviously, and memories. And what was that like?
Right. It was tough. We call it the Walter Reed shuffle, where you'll have 2 steps forward, 1 step back, or there's days that you don't have any steps forward, you have 2 steps back. And at moments, it feels like you're never going to get out of there. And I was told it was going to be about a 2-year recovery there. I basically just wanted to stay as busy as I could, keep my mind busy, keep my body busy. But I had to wait for the healing. I had to lay flat, basically.
All right, we are back with Ask Aaron and John Kriesel. I apologize. John and I both depend on technology for daily ambulation, and so does Facebook, and so does this show. So technology is sometimes questionable, but not with our knees, right, John?
That's correct.
100%. So before we lost the audience here, we were talking about you putting on the check sockets, taking your first steps. And you shared a cool story with me with your practitioner at Walter Reed. Tom, I believe his name was.
Yes.
Getting a little creative in your therapy.
Yeah, so he had said he had kind of learned, you become close with them, obviously. And I mean, they have their hands where most people don't put their hands and all.
Sure.
And so you have conversations, and he learned that I loved golf before I had been hurt, and he was like, well, let's get you back out, we'll go out to the course, and he'd try and set up to where maybe there was no one right behind us, so weren't in a big hurry, and he'd bring his tools out there, and he would make adjustments to my prosthesis. And at this point we're probably in May/June, and then he would make adjustments. But the biggest thing with that was I learned to trust the prosthetics because I wasn't in parallel bars. I didn't have canes. And I'd have my club and I would be swinging, and if you fall down, at least it's grass and you're fine. But you really learn balance then, and it's rarely a perfectly flat lie, especially the way I hit it. And so it fired up my passion for golf again, but it also really taught me to trust my prosthetic legs.
Absolutely. And we talked about, every scenario in golf, whether it's that what could be considered a violent swing at a golf ball,
Yep.
Walking on the undulating greens, getting in the sand, sprinkler heads, you're going from tall grass to short grass to tar, cart pass. It throws a lot of variables at you. So
Right.
I totally get that. Every time you come off that golf course, you're so much more confident in what the knees are going to do in every circumstance. So that's very cool. How many rounds do you think you played prior to heading home?
Probably 10 to 15. I mean, it was, and that might be a light estimate because I would go at least once a week. But then when I wasn't doing that, there was it was called Olney Golf Park. And it was, I think technically Silver Spring, Maryland. It was about maybe a 15-minute drive north of Walter Reed. And they would allow wounded veterans that were from Walter Reed to use the driving range whenever they wanted at no charge. And they'd give some brief lessons. And so they kind of helped get me a little bit dialed in. Not like getting regular serious lessons like I do now, but it was awesome. And it was a way to get my mind off of maybe an upcoming surgery or kind of what had happened. It was a good distraction from life, and you're out, and I drove up there alone, and it was just kind of a nice freedom. a feeling of freedom to escape the grounds of Walter Reed and just go and focus on something fun.
Sure. Very cool. Take your mind off of life for a while, and certainly, like I said, physical therapy and great cardio too. It's a lot of work getting out there and getting in and out of the cart and advancing the ball as much as you can and doing it again. But a lot of fun. And then you went home back to Minnesota, and that's a huge transition there after being at Walter Reed and getting the care. What was that like?
It was weird because at Walter Reed, everything's focused on the patient and getting you well, your recovery, getting you to be the best you possibly can be. And then you get back home and the show goes on. And so that was, I was in a different marriage at the time. She went back to work. My former stepsons went to school. So it kind of became my job to take them to school and pick them up. And then I would go through and during the day. Then I was kind of bored, so I would try to go to the driving range or whatever. But then you're alone. All my friends are working, families at school and working. It was like this loud quiet where you're just like, I need something. There was so much it felt like missing from my life, and
Sure.
and so I had to get to a point for me where I became very independent, self-sufficient, and it was a good thing for me because I tried to stay as busy as I could, and it was the process where I was going through medical board to retire from the military, so I was still on active duty, and it was just it was a weird deal. So it was like I was in a purgatory. I was waiting to retire from the military, so I couldn't really go to get a civilian job yet. So there was nothing really to occupy my time. It was except golf or movies or just doing something during the day because I didn't want to just sit in the house quiet,
Sure. Yeah, that's a huge message right there to anybody that's just starting to go through that. Is you can have all the caregivers in the world or very few, a small support system, but it's important to recognize the most important and I think critical role in the recovery is yourself. Just
Right.
staying mentally and physically intact and setting milestones and setting goals that you can work towards and accomplish, whether there's 5 people rooting you on or you're there by yourself.
Right.
But obviously you persevered. You did a wonderful job filling up that time and getting to where you are today. So mentally and physically, talked to a lot of people about that. I think it's just as mentally trying as it is physically trying, where you just think the opposite. But, the word trust has come up so many times, and, you and I are the same. We're bilaterals. Both legs are gone. And, I remember being in the parallel bars for the first time, and I hate to admit this, but when I put the prosthetics on and I try to take my first steps, it hit me that I can't feel the ground.
Right.
You never really think of that, but then your prosthetics don't function when you're looking down. But what do? You want to make sure they're bending and they're there at heel strike and they're there at toe load and they're doing what the practitioner told you what to do. So
Right.
physically and mentally, it was very, very trying in the recovery stages.
Now, did you have any not phantom pain, because I'm sure you have that, but phantom sensation? Did you ever have that where you kind of, and I feel like that's helpful, don't you? Where you kind of can feel where your feet are or should be. That helped me sort of learn to trust the legs, because it was like, okay, I have an idea of where the end of my prosthetics are. It's a weird deal, right? I mean,
yeah, in that case, I never had that. That's interesting.
Okay.
I never had that. And you had that on both your AK and BK side, or just the BK
yes.
side, or okay, wow.
On both, I feel like a tingling, and right now as I'm talking about it, I kind of have a tingling down, and like right now I can kind of feel my toes, but they're not there. Thankfully, I don't get too much phantom pain a couple times a year maybe. When I was going through the recovery, I had horrible phantom pain, so thankfully that's kind of went away. but Phantom Sensation, I'm a fan of because I'm like,
Yeah,
I can
that's a
kind of feel
bonus.
my toes. Yeah.
That's a bonus. Well, I can wiggle mine. I mean, I still got
Yeah.
the opportunity to do that, or
Yep.
the nerves are still there. So that, which is kind of weird, but and then let's talk about your legislative run. You represented a district in Minnesota. What was your motivation getting into politics, coming out of everything that you had been through and getting into politics?
Well, when I medically retired from the military, I felt like there was kind of a void in my life. There was like a vacuum that uh, the, I loved the military. As I said before, I wanted to join since I was 10, and it didn't exactly end on my terms. And the military said I could have stayed in on active duty and I would have had a desk job. But that's not what I signed up to do. I signed up to be an infantryman. And so I didn't want to take someone else's spot. I didn't want to do any of that. And I wanted to just get back to civilian life and start a job, start a career, start my new normal. Well, then I'd been approached by some people in my community that were involved in politics, and they said they thought I'd be good at it. I was like, all right, well, that's kind of all I need to hear. And it was a good challenge. I mean, it was 2000, end of 2009, and I announced my run in 2010 at the beginning of it. The challenge ahead of me, that I had never been involved in politics. I had my own opinions, but learning in this community was so great to me. It was a chance to give back. It was a chance to serve in a different capacity now that I was out of the military. And so that was kind of my drive behind it. And I knew I wasn't supposed to win. It was, the odds were so stacked against me that I thought, how awesome will this be if I can win this election and prove to myself, prove to others. And we did. I won by 452 votes when I was a huge underdog. And that was one of the best moments of my life, because I realized that if I really want something, if I want to do something, and I work hard enough at it, and I put together a good team, I can do it. And it was the biggest accomplishment of my life at that point, and it really gave me confidence moving forward that I had value outside of the military.
Really? Yeah, that's very, very cool story. I was going to ask you what your takeaway was from the time served, from the term served, but that's an incredible takeaway right there. I mean,
Yeah.
that's awesome.
And I think
Yeah. And then
anyone that's interested should get involved, because I learned to listen to people with opposing views. And while we may not agree, I learned where they're coming from, instead of just sitting in my living room watching the news and going, here's my
yelling
opinion.
at it.
Yeah. That doesn't get anywhere. That doesn't get anybody
Right.
anywhere. And so listening to people who have opposing views, you'd be amazed at how much you can learn. The problem is today,
Sure.
people just want to yell and scream and not listen to other people. And so that was
Yeah,
my biggest takeaway from politics. And I'm glad I got to do it, because I learned a lot from people.
that's very cool. That's a great story. And then you became an author. I mean, you're just rolling here, John. Did somebody approach you for that? Like they approached you with politics, or is that something you
Yes.
sought out? Okay.
Yes. And now people watching this are going to be like, well, all I have to do is approach John and I can get him to do anything. So, yes, I was giving a speech at a fundraiser for Boy Scouts, and this gentleman named Jim Cosmo, I was walking out to my vehicle afterwards, and I saw out of the corner of my eye, and I was like, am I going to have to throw hands? Like, is someone going to,
Here we
and
go.
yeah, and he comes up and he goes, that was amazing. I think it should be a book. And I was like, awesome. I think it should be a book too. I still can't believe that this happened to me. And he goes, I want to write it. So I was like, okay, let's pump the brakes though, Mario Andretti. Let's, and so I was like, what do you write and whatnot? Because, and again, we talked about White Bear High School. I don't think it's producing a heck of a lot of writers. And I was an infantryman in the Army, so I'm not writing the book. And he said he had been a newspaper reporter. He had done a lot of writing, but just not a book. So I was like, all right, let's sit down and meet. We'll discuss it. I talked to a attorney and just kind of figured everything out. Came up with a contract. We've since ripped it up. He's become one of my best friends. And so we wrote the book together. He did the bulk of the writing. I did some of the editing and the talking. And It's won 8 National Book Awards. It's sold, I think, over 40,000 copies. It's been awesome, and it helped. I feel like it's helped people learn what I've learned without them having to go through it. And so it's been an awesome experience. We
Sure.
refreshed it in 2018, kind of update it because a lot of things in my life changed from the original version of the book.
Yeah. Now today, what does the day in the life look? Day in the life of John Kriesel look like? You're working for Director of Veteran Services for Anoka County.
Yes.
And you're playing a lot of golf now. And
Yes.
you recently took part in a tournament for Tee It Up for the Troops. And what was that called? A day of golf, or the
It was
longest
called
day of golf?
the longest day of golf for the troops. And so Chaps McNeely from Barstool Sports flew out to participate. My buddy Tim Nelson, who is the tall, handsome guy next to me on the cover of the book, he was in the blast with me in the seat behind me. We finished 55 holes that day and raised a good amount of money for Teed Up for the Troops. So that was fun. And then, yeah, my full-time job is I'm the Director of Veteran Services for Anoka County. So I help veterans get VA benefits, benefits that they've earned, and help them get access to those. And then fortunate enough to have a solid vacation time package with them that I'm able to then go and do some speeches throughout the United States and locally here to share my story with businesses and organizations, and just kind of spread the word and try and give people a perspective on the outlook on life that I have now after going through what I did. So life is great. Married, I've got a almost 2-year-old daughter. It's just, yeah, life is perfect.
That's fantastic. And you're motivational speaker as well. And that's what you said, you're traveling all over. You will speak for businesses, school groups. Anybody who wants to get a hold of you can go to John, John Kriesel, KRIESEL.com, and we will post this as well. And hire him. I've heard him speak. He does an incredible job.
Thank you.
Inject some humor in there, and an incredible story, as you've shared part of that with us, and we appreciate that. And John, you are on social media too. How do people follow you there?
Yes, at John Kriesel on Twitter. I'm most active on Twitter, and Instagram is at John Kriesel. I'm on Facebook occasionally. I try to be on it a little more lately. I enjoy it. But yeah, that's the best way of tracking me down.
Power Trip KFAN as well. How did you get involved with the radio show?
So when I was at Walter Reed, I was coming home for my first R&R visit to see my family, to see my friends. They were having a fundraiser for me at O'Garris to help make my house handicap accessible. And so the PR gentleman from the Minnesota Army National Guard, Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Olson, brought me around to different news stations and radio stations and whatnot. And when I went into KFAN, we just hit it off. And you could just tell there was a connection. And Chris Hockey said, when you get back from Walter Reed, whether it's this year, whether it's next year, whether it's 3 years from now, you let me know, and we're going to have John Kriesel Week. We'll have you come in. I was like, awesome. So I wasn't going to let that opportunity pass by. So I let him know, and I got home in August of 2007, and I let him know that I was home. They had me in, and he said the feedback was good. He said, come in once a week if you could. And I've been doing that for 14 years now.
Wow.
Yeah, I can't believe
fantastic.
how fast
That's very cool.
Yeah.
That's great. And that's kind of a rowdy crowd, isn't it?
It is. Yes. It's a sports talk station, but we talk current events. We talk just humor. It's a perfect morning show. And we're all very close friends off air. So it's like buddies shooting the breeze.
Sure.
And you just forget the microphones there, which can be problematic at times. But yeah, it's I feel so blessed. The listeners are the most loyal bunch of people. It is throughout the whole upper Midwest of the United States. Or if you don't live in the upper Midwest, you can find it on iHeartRadio app. It's KFAN's Power Trip Morning Show. Give it a chance. I guarantee you'll love it. It's a bunch of great people.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I will let you get back to your family and back to life and all the things that you're doing. On behalf of myself, the viewers, my colleagues at Ottobock, thank you for your service, your sacrifice.
Thank you.
And really thank you for your time tonight. And thank you everyone for joining today's session of Ask Aaron. We apologize again about the technical difficulties, but it was great talking with John Kriesel. In July, we will welcome Ezra Freck to the show. Ezra was just named a team member of Team USA for the Paralympic Games to be held later this summer. So we'll see you in July. And John, I will follow up with you regarding that golf game, and
sounds good.
Jim regarding the books.
Perfect. Awesome. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you, sir.
See ya.
All right. Good night.